inspired today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather. Jeremiah 29:11 reads, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." These words truly hit home to me on the afternoon of May 22nd, 2011. A year and a half ago, my life changed. It was a regular, lazy Sunday afternoon, and I was taking a shower when the electricity went out. I quickly finished my shower and no sooner heard what sounded like a distant thunder. As the thunder grew louder and louder and began shaking the house, I realized I needed to get to the basement. As I was running to the basement, there were windows breaking, parts of walls being sucked out, and a lot of chaos. When I reached the basement, I held on for dear life as my entire house was shaking and the tornado was ripping my home in half. From the beginning of the electricity going out to the end of me being in the basement was no longer than a couple of minutes, but that was enough to have changed my life forever. As I came out of the basement that day, I realized that my house was destroyed. The entire second level was gone, the first level was exploded and scattered with debris, and the basement was flooded, and I had no idea what I was going to do. On that day, I think I learned what it meant to be a neighbor. We'd only been in the neighborhood for about a year and a half when the storm hit, but it felt like we had been there for years. Within about a minute of the storm, I had neighbors running over to check on me. The man next door was there right away to ask if I was okay, and he brought me some pants to wear. A couple of seconds later, my other neighbor, Tom, came over to see if I was okay. By this time, the sirens were going off, and he told me that I needed to grab my stuff, and we had to run. So I found my rubber rain boots and followed him. He told me that he knew the best way back to his house. I had no idea what that meant until I stepped outside. The rain was pounding down on us. We ran in between houses, jumped over power lines, and ducked under trees. I couldn't even see my car that was parked in our street. There were huge trees down everywhere, many of them directly up from their roots. As soon as I got to Tom and Jen's house, we ran downstairs. There was another young woman down there who had evacuated the bus she was riding, and Tom had grabbed her in from the street. I spent about the next hour or so in their house, holding their kids and playing with their dog, Curly. If it had not been for that family, I think I may have lost my mind. In the following weeks, as neighbors, we ate meals together, cried together, and prayed together. I truly cherish the memories that we created after the storm. Once my roommate and landlord realized that the house was unsalvageable and unlivable, she decided to donate it to Urban Homeworks. They came in right away and decided to save the main structure of the house and to rebuild to eventually sell again. Throughout those next couple of months, I would drive by our house several times a week. I just wanted to see what they had done to my home. Because even though I no longer lived there, it still felt like it was my home. It was stolen from me, and I just wanted to get it back. So as I would check on the house, Nate from Urban Homeworks would always ask me, "Heather, when are you going to just buy this house?" And I would always tell him, "I'm not grown up enough to buy a house, are you kidding?" To which he would always respond, "As long as I can pay my rent, I can own a home." So in May, I decided to start the process of buying the house back, and boy, is it a process. I've gotten to know so many people at Urban Homeworks, but especially Mike Spicer. He has answered every single question I've ever had, every question my dad has ever had, which is a lot. And he's literally walked me through each step of the way. People often ask me, "Heather, why in the world do you want to live on the north side, and why in the world do you want to go back to that home?" And my response is simple. It's that it's my home. It's where my neighbors are. It's the place that I take refuge and the place that I feel called to be. Earlier I said that Jeremiah 29:11 has taken on a whole new meaning in my life since the tornado. The reason is because on the only wall left standing in my room that day was my cross. And on that cross read that verse, that God has a plan for me that is bigger than I can see. That God's plan is not to harm me, but to give me a hope and a future. And I will admit it has taken me quite a while to believe this and to see God's plan in all of this, but now I'm confident that he will continue to work through this tornado. So I stand before you today as the proud homeowner of 3647 Emerson Avenue North. There is no way that I could be here without the incredible work of Urban Homeworks and without all of you who support them financially and in prayer. I cannot thank you enough for making my dream come true, and that dream was simply to go home. Thank you.
Hello. You look marvelous. Give yourselves a hand. You're so beautiful. That's right. I know there were some wagers already that I've heard about whether or not I'm going to cry or not. I do not know, so just hang on. My name is Dan. I'm part of the mission delivery team that oversees the rental housing program. In your programs on the table, you'll see that we've been experiencing a lot of growth. And in the last year, since last August and through the end of this year, we'll add 46 units of additional rental housing. And that's almost double what we were prior to that period. Even though we've grown and added more housing, our 1, 2, and 3 bedroom wait lists are closed because the demand is so great. Our goal is to provide dignified housing and long-term stability. We do this by keeping our rents affordable for those individuals who do not have housing subsidies, engaging people in a process by which they get to know their neighbors. Sometimes neighbors even offer pants to... That doesn't happen a lot, but that can happen. And then assisting people to support them when challenges come their way. When challenges come and threaten housing stability, we want to be helpful, connect families to people and resources that will equip them to find solutions, skills to navigate those challenges as they come in their future, and to maintain their housing stability. As a part of the innovative strategy that we employ, we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach to working with our families. As a housing services team, we're committed to evaluating circumstances as they come and responding in a creative way that expresses the inherent value of the people in our housing. To keep them stable long-term so their kids can remain in schools, so parents can be better parents. They can be better employees, they can contribute to the needs in the community. And I must say that as I was preparing for my part of this event, I was initially going to talk to you about paradigms and studies that talk about why people move and what are the variables and factors that keep people stable. I was keeping it at a very cognitive, theoretical level because I really didn't want to get up here in front of you and be on the verge of what I'm on the verge of. But as I wrestled with the content of what I wanted to say, I realized that I was being very disingenuous. And I owe it to you to make a personal connection because I'm challenging you to make a personal connection to this work. I think it's important for you to know that I've been on the receiving end of the model of Urban Homeworks. Last year was one of the toughest in my life. In the 10 years that I've been with Urban Homeworks, I reached a breaking point last fall. And after a month-long leave of absence, I returned in December and was asked to step up again into the management of the housing team. I want to say thank you to the directors of Urban Homeworks. I'm thankful that they didn't give me what I probably deserved. And I'm here today because the leadership team stayed close enough to be helpful, connect me to resources, help me to navigate the challenges and while maintaining my own stability. I'm a product of this passionate resolve to not give up on people. There are many stories that have happened throughout the course of the last year that we would love to share with you, and admittedly, some of those are wrought with some pretty difficult circumstances. But the one that we're going to share with you today, that's going to be shared by one of our current family members, is one that lifts our spirits as we think about and stay engaged in this work. Tawana Bamba and I first met when she was working for Freeport West in South Minneapolis. She was a caseworker supporting a teenage mom that was living in our housing. And I never knew Tawana's own housing story until she showed up in our office one day to fill out an application. I later learned, as you will today, that she was applying to move back into a house that she loved but had to leave. The owner of the house had mismanaged the property and it was in bad shape. Despite moving out of the house in the neighborhood, Tawana kept coming back to check on this house, wondering what would happen to it. Tawana has what I would describe as a sense of place to that house, the neighborhood, and the neighbors. Sometimes when I talk about the overall stability in housing, I like the phrase sense of place. This is a way of describing our familiarity with and connection to not just a geographic area, but with everything that's connected to it. Place can literally be as simple as, or subconscious as, knowing how sunlight comes in a window in a particular time of year. If you can tell which dog is barking, which kids are at the bus stop, or which neighbor's door is slamming without seeing it, chances are you have a good sense of place where you currently live. Place is the difference between a house and a home. As Tawana shares her story, you'll get a sense of what it's meant for her to come back home. Please help me welcome her to the stage.
Good morning. My name is Tawana Shed Bamba, and I'm not only a resident, I'm a mother, a grandmother, a foster parent. I have worked in social services for over 15 years. I've worked with high-risk youth, their families. I'm the matriarch of my family, known as the glue that holds them together. I moved from Chicago with my children, excuse me, in 1993, and I asked God to bless this move. To his glory, we moved to Lovell Square in North Minneapolis, where we lived for 17 years. Everything was working out fine for the first 7 years. When I needed a larger place for my grandchildren, that's when our nightmare began. My grandchildren and I were forced to move several times. I'll share some of the awful things we had to endure. Number one was mice. The mice were so bad that my daughter screamed one night, and when I went into the room to find out what was going on, she was shivering in the corner because the mice had gotten into bed with her. I had birds that would scream at night where the mice would get into the cage and eat the seeds. Number two, the roaches. We moved into a different apartment, and the roaches were so bad that our food, we had to use Ziploc bags for our sugar, for our flour, for our cornmeal. The roaches were in the electrical appliances. They were just everywhere. At night, we would watch the TV with the lights on because if you cut them off, the roaches would crawl across the screen. We then moved again. We moved into 1419, which I was happy to be there. It was a lovely place. I love to cook, and my grandkids were downstairs in the basement playing. And my grandson ran up, real happy. He said, "Granny, guess what? You don't have to buy mushrooms anymore." I said, "What? You don't have to buy mushrooms anymore?" I said, "'Cause they're growing downstairs. It's a lot of them, too, and they're about this big." I'm like, oh, no. Later on, we were notified that we would have to move because Hennepin County had bought the property and they were going to build high-end condos that we would not be able to afford. And so there was a company that was going to help us financially to relocate. And then they contacted us and told us that they had lost the contract. So our agency gave us 60 days to move. I moved out of Lovell Square into 36 in Penn, which is a war zone, Penn Avenue North, which was a war zone. I didn't have to deal with rats or mice or cockroaches. I had to deal with gangbangers, prostitution, panhandlers. My children, well, my grandkids, they couldn't catch the bus to school, the school bus, because those people never sleep and those activities never ceased. The panhandlers would ask my kids for money, so I drove them to school every day. We lived in fear. I never want to experience that again. The shooting, the screaming, the loud music, the breaking into cars. One morning, I drove my kids to school, and on the way back, I passed by my old mushroom house, and they were outside working. I got out the car and I asked about it, and that's when I met Ben, and he strongly encouraged me to apply. I went directly there, and as I got there, I saw Dan that I remember I had worked with several years ago, and I went up and I was given an application, and I brought it back the next day. I didn't hear from Anna for several months because I knew that the place would be at least 5 months before it was ready. So I was on pins and needles. I just want to tell you this last story of that address. I went in the house, I was barbecuing. I went in the house, and when I came back out, and this is at Penn, when I came back out to the grill, they had stole my ribs off the grill. I said, now this is crazy. But getting back to the main point of my story, when Anna did call and tell me I could come and get the keys, we came with our backpacks and we got those keys. And when we got to our house, my grandkids ran upstairs, downstairs, all over. My grandson, you probably have to buy mushrooms now, Granny, because none down there. It looks different. You know, I wasn't able to rest. When I was in that house, all I could see is that all my troubles were over. Praise God. I could rest, and it's a difference when you sleep and when you rest. I didn't have to worry about anything else. I sit in my living room and I watch TV with the lights out. My grandkids can go outside. They can play. These are things that they couldn't do. They couldn't go out and skate. They couldn't ride their bikes. They couldn't go to the garbage to empty the trash for fear of seeing an act of prostitution. My kids couldn't just play in the yard. We were confined in the house. And now we're outside. I'm able to start my garden back. My grandkids play all the time. And then I can come in the house and I don't have to worry about them. I don't drive them to school. They walk to school and they walk home. I thank God and I thank Urban Homeworks for giving me back my home. And I thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart for the support that you have done and the support that you will give. In closing, I'm home now at Lovell Square, and I pray to him that I honor the most. Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to come home.
All right. Thank you, Tawana. It takes a lot of courage to stand in front of a group of people like this and tell a story, and I just applaud you for your courage and thank you for coming and crying with us. But the better half of compassion is not pain, it's celebration. And so it is part of the story is who we celebrate with, and I'm just happy to be celebrating with you, Tawana. Well, thanks a lot for coming and being here today. I want to thank Councilmember Samuels for your presence and your words, even though you were late. And our sponsors on the backside of our program here, I do want to just line out these sponsors: Bell Polls, Marketplace, the Crew to U.S. Bank, Kemp's, Success Computer Solutions, and University Bank. By the way, if you see the Crew 2 folks running around, these guys are like pulling this event off for us. They're huge. So I want to thank them for their volunteer. So if you see them, give them a hug, especially if a name tag says Steve. If it's a Crew 2 guy and his name tag, he's right over here. He loves hugs. Give him a hug. All right. It is probably one of the most deep privileges of my life to work with a compassionate group of people that are incredibly competent. And so I would just like you to help me thank the Urban Homeworks team as they stand up to be recognized. And then I don't get to do this very often, so I have to do this. I have one person in my life that is just an incredible support and champion, and so I want to just call out and thank the love of my life, my high school sweetheart, Sheila. She's sitting right here. This last 13 years has been a crazy journey for me, both personally and in this role. So I'd like to take a second and just introduce myself and talk a little bit about who I've begun to understand myself to be and who I think I'm becoming. I am a husband. I am a father to Sam, Joe, and Kate. I am a son. I'm trying to figure out how to follow this Jesus. I am a neighbor in North Minneapolis. I am white. I am middle-ish class. I am heterosexual. And I am male. I am the benefactor of a whole pile of privileges just because I am some of these things. And I am getting more conscious and more aware about how these privileges have and continue to contribute towards disparities between me and my neighbor. I am committed to my neighbor. I am not guilty. I am motivated. I am inspired and motivated to invest my life in being a solution, taking the unconscious liability of blind privilege and converting it through the fires of solidarity and relationship towards a conscious asset that leads to transformative change. I am sold out, all in on the mission of Urban Homeworks as not the tool or a good tool, but as one of a number of great tools in our community, in the toolbox of our community, to perpetuate this hope of Jesus Christ and to aspire towards the vision of a beloved community that we hold. This idea of perpetuate conjures up some things in my brain. It suggests a catalyzing or an encouraging, a building upon, that there is a hope that is already here, and that I'm not bringing it, and you're not bringing it. It goes far beyond this idea of preserving, which feels kind of passive to me, and it suggests something very active. To perpetuate means that we stand in solidarity in the storms of the day, that we walk through the rubble of the storm, trusting that the path will unfold before us with a more clear view of the hope that rests on the horizon. As Jim spoke, he referred to the idea of inspiration. To be indwelled by something that motivates and compels, that perpetuates one towards hope that one sees in oneself or a neighbor. To be attracted and compelled by this idea of a place and a people. I think you might have seen the photo of Heather's house on the screen, the one with the rainbow in the background. This is a profound image of this kind of perpetuate. In the midst of the rubble, with her eyes on the rainbow of hope over the horizon, Heather found out she is not alone. She is a part of a people and a place. Tijuana described this in her story as what it means to return back home to her community in a fabric of relationships that serves as a foundation to further perpetuate this hope that resides deep within her. She belongs to a people and a place. We lost a warrior for this kind of hope this last year. Dr. John McKay Williams could always be found in the rubble and working towards the recovery. And it doesn't seem to matter which storm, 9/11, the tornado that ripped through North Minneapolis, or the numerous social and economic storms that have raged on and around West Broadway over the years, he perpetuated a presence and a hope that was beyond himself, and we will miss him deeply. Perpetuate implies, in my mind, this sense of movement. So we are moving. As an organization and as a community, we are moving, and Urban Homeworks is growing. So I want to make a couple points. We will not grow for the sake of growth. Growth is not the goal. We will only grow because the voices that are whispering and screaming in our ears are demanding it. We will grow so that Urban Homeworks can become a more effective tool in the hands of our community to meet the demands, satisfy the desires, and ultimately to reach towards our dreams. So we are being asked to grow. Right now we have about 22 projects that we're working on that range from new initiatives to bringing depth and breadth to current ones. For example, while blending these voices of people needing housing in an environment of less than 2% vacancy rate and tight credit, with the voices of concerned neighbors regarding vacant and foreclosed homes, we're piloting a project with one of our partners, Project for Pride in Living, to tackle together 100 single-family homes. Fix them up to healthy home standards, rent them until the household can either purchase the building or the credit markets can accommodate the sale. And a local funder has come around us and helped catalyze this project with a recent commitment of $5 million that can be used as a match towards the total project budget of $13 million. This is one of those 22 projects. Each one of these projects represents multiple layers of relationships and multiple layers of real estate. Multiple people in multiple places. So a lot of people in the room kind of get this idea that growth kind of requires some investment. Growth can sometimes be a little bit cash intense. And so in order to perpetuate this hope rather than preserve it, we are projecting a capacity building investment of $2.3 million